think. Yes, hello everyone. We continue our series of webinars related to climate in Eastern Europe, Caucasus, and Central Asia. My name is Ira Понедельник. I'm from n-ost. Together with Ken Eco, we have a communicators network for communicators and journalists from the region, and also with MediaNet, we have project called Communicating Climate in Central Asia, and that's why we are here to talk about, I think, in my perspective, topics that it's not that much, unfortunately, visible in your publications. So this can be a chance to hear about this campaign and be part of it. And I'm happy to introduce you Dina Ni. She's communication specialist in saving the Caspian Sea. So the procedure is like this, as was usual. Please write your questions if you have any chat, and I'm going to interrupt Dina and ask them. Or otherwise, we are going to listen presentation, and after that, answer your questions that you have. And the floor for Dina. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ira. Just double checking that everyone can see my presentation, right?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. So thanks again for having me here today. My name is Dina, and as Ira mentioned, I'm a communication specialist with the Save the Caspian Sea movement now. I'm originally, well, some of you already know me. I'm originally from Almaty, Kazakhstan, but I'm currently based out of Toronto, Canada. I've been living here for about 7 years now, and I'm pursuing a master's degree in environmental science at the University of Toronto. I was previously with Greenpeace Canada, and before that, I was also working in the Central Asian region with Live in Asia and socio-ecological fund. So I'm not new to the environmental field and to communications in particular. So before we go into details, I'm just going to give you a sense of what we are going to talk about today. So obviously, first of all, I wanted to talk about our movement in particular. I'm going to present you with our values, objectives. Then we are going to talk a bit more about the state of the Caspian Sea, well, which is not so good, spoiler alert, but you probably already knew that. We're going to talk about some of the threats it's facing, and then we'll go into more details about well, about our movement again, but we were talking about more about the some of the tools we've used, some of the tactics, which worked, which one worked, which ones didn't. And then it will be our segue to open a discussion to some lessons learned. I'll share some of my comms tips. And this potentially could be a good moment to ask questions. I do know that there is a Q&A time at the end of the webinar, but maybe I could just take questions if there are any as we go. So we'll see how it goes. So again, thank you very much, everyone, for being here today. It's always a pleasure to be in a room with people who share the same values as yours. And I think we can all agree that as well, as communicators in particular, our words do carry a certain weight, which can be heavy at times. But our words are also very important because they can drive real changes, they can expose, they can inspire. They can also mobilize, and sometimes they can also save things that might have otherwise been lost. And we are really hoping that that will be the case with the Caspian Sea. And actually, that belief is exactly what inspired us to start this campaign, because those stories that we wanted to tell were at the heart of the Save the Caspian Sea movement, which in fact, I'm not able to use my keyboard. Okay. So, as I said, those stories were actually at the beginning of the very heart of our movement, which started with some complicated feelings, like probably outrage, but we decided to channel that towards something meaningful, and that's how the movement was born. Actually, about a year ago, in December of 2024, and as I said, the movement sort of grew out of frustration, but also not only that, but also out of hope, because we wanted to bring together people again, who share the same values and who bring different types of expertise to the table, because it's very critical to have that knowledge to be able to achieve the goals that we had set for ourselves. So as a part of a movement, we were able to bring together experts from the environmental science, experts with law background, communication specialists, but also activists, creative professionals, and also just concerned people who wanted to save the Caspian, who cared about it. And if I had to summarize our campaign in 3 words, which are basically our values, those would be transparency, accountability, and action. Transparency, because we cannot fix what we cannot see. Accountability, because good intention without measurable responsibility, it means nothing. And action, because time has already run too far ahead of us, especially with the Caspian Sea and many other environmental issues. So we set ourselves a very specific set of objectives. Some of those might appear a bit vague to you at first, but I'm going to elaborate on those and explain what exactly we meant by that, and then we'll dig more into details and this third part of this presentation. So the first one is sort of obvious from the communications standpoint. We are trying to raise awareness about the Caspian Sea crisis, not only in Kazakhstan, but in the region and also globally, because at this point, the Caspian Sea problem is not a local issue. It's not a regional issue. It's actually an embodiment of a triple planetary crisis. So, and we thought it was important to change the narrative too. And because of that, another objective that we set for ourselves was to hold corporations accountable for the damage they've caused to the Caspian Sea so far. And as a result of that, sorry, I think there's some noise outside. I'm not sure if you can hear. So as I said, like the third objective that we had was to advocate for stronger monitoring, regulation, and restoration policy in order to protect local communities and ecosystem. And again, one of the main objectives for us was to unite like-minded people, from scientists to students, from artists to lawyers, in a network that can actually push for change across borders. So this is a quick overview of the objectives that we had. And when we first started, many people were skeptical. And if I'm being honest, some of them still are. And it's a common issue in the sector. Probably many of us have encountered that people are telling us, oh, it's too complex as a subject. The Caspian is also shared by 5 countries, so there is no way you guys can bring all of them together. You cannot possibly make people care, because this issue is just far away from people's day-to-day concerns, because there is also a global recession, like so many things, so there is no way people would care. But if there is one thing that we all know as communicators, is that complexity does not necessarily kill progress. What does kill progress is silence. And what we decided to do is to break that silence. And that's why I'm here today. But before we talk more specifically about the approaches that we had taken, went too far. And we talk about communication strategies, we need to understand what is at stake. So let's talk about the state of the Caspian Sea a little bit first. Well, as you all probably know, the Caspian Sea, or what remains of it, is not just a regional issue. It's a global crisis, which is rooted in climate change, extractivism, and political opacity, all condensed in this one water body. So the Caspian Sea is the largest enclosed body of water on Earth, covering about 370 kilometers, which is roughly, I think it's more than the size of Germany, which is insane. It lies 28 meters below sea level, and it's nestled between Azerbaijan, Iran, Kazakhstan, Russia, and Turkmenistan. But another thing that I wanted to highlight is that the Caspian Sea is not just an abstract point on the map. It's more than just geography. It's been culture, livelihood, and identity of peoples who are living there. Fishing villages, birds' migratory routes, sacred landscapes, they're all intertwined here. And that's exactly what we are trying to protect. But unfortunately, today, the Caspian Sea is in crisis, and it's in direct crisis, and we are running out of times, and the threats and that it's facing are actually all layered and intertwined. So that's the issue we're facing here. But again, later on, I'll explain why we think that the message we want to send is not only about desperation, but it's about hope as well. And I think it's a really important thing to highlight. But let's talk about the threats first. Okay. So, well, first of all, the Caspian's water balance depends heavily on the Volga River, which provides about 80% of water flow into the Caspian. But as the climate warms, Volga's discharge has dropped dramatically. And on top of that, with rising temperatures, the evaporation has also accelerated. So the bottom line of this is that inflow is actually decreasing and outflow increasing. And as a result of that, the predictions are not exactly hopeful at this point. The Caspian Sea is projected to drop by up to 18 meters by the end of the century, which means that we could lose about a third of its surface area. And to imagine that, think of a shorelines retreating 50 kilometers inland, especially along the Kazakh coast. Another problem, go back for a quick second. Another problem is that for decades, the Caspian has also been an oil and gas hub. And that's where we're talking a lot about accountability as a part of our campaign, because the seabed actually holds some of the richest hydrocarbon reserves. And as a result of that, the consequences for the ecosystems and local communities. Spills, leaks, drilling, waste, and runoff have poisoned body water and soil around it. Add to that the rising tide of plastic pollution, and you get a recipe for an ecological collapse, which is exactly what we are witnessing today. And the third problem of the Caspian Sea is that I wanted to highlight is the biodiversity loss. Well, the first animal that probably comes to mind is a Caspian seal, which has which is this cute animal with like round eyes, and it's also endemic to the Caspian Sea. The problem is that at this point, it's not just a cute animal, it's actually an indicator species. The decline of which clearly demonstrates to us that the Caspian Sea ecosystem is collapsing. And it is just one of many examples, in fact. And the population of the Caspian Sea has already decreased by roughly 90%. And that's also the case for many other species, especially the sturgeon. Imagine a fish that has actually survived 200 million years through ice ages and mass extinctions is now driven almost to extinction by human greed. Its caviar was once called the gold of the Caspian, has now become a symbol not of luxury, but of extinction, actually. So yeah, as you can see, the Caspian is dying, but I wanted to be clear, it's not over yet. Yes, we are running out of time, but the battle is not over, and we have this narrow window. And I think it's really important for us to take advantage of this small window that we have. And I think that's the time when communication should become the lifeline. That's when we should instill hope and take meaningful actions to be able to reserve this sad trend. So, As I promised, I wanted to talk today a bit more about some of the strategies that we took as a part of our campaign. And when we just started, we started asking ourselves simple, but well, they're not exactly simple, they're obvious questions. But at the same time, they could be quite complex in their nature. We were wondering do we make people care? Because as Ira mentioned today, the Caspian Sea crisis is not exactly getting the visibility it needs. It is getting the media attention in a way, but the narrative is not exactly, well, what we were hoping it would be. It almost sounded like, oh, the days of the Caspian are over, there's nothing we can do. So we just need to mourn the Caspian. And yeah, so we wonder how we can change that, how we can make people care about something they cannot see. Some of them cannot visit because it's too far away, and something that they barely hear about in the news. And then when they do, it just sounds like, oh, it's over. Like there's no hope left for the Caspian. And our answer to that was that again, it's not exactly a perfect me like it's not an easy and probably not a perfect solution, but what we wanted to do is to bring bridges between the expertise on the topic that exists, between the information that exists and emotions, and make people care, make people empathize with the problem, and make them realize that it's we still can do things. Because of that, we based our communication strategy on three pillars. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of those pillars, and then I'm going to elaborate on each and every one of those later on. So the first one was to leverage external news hooks, which probably sounds like an obvious decision for communications, for a communications approach. However, from my experience, I don't think it's necessarily the case for communications in this field in particular, because I feel like we tend to operate in a bubble and just assume that because we care, everyone cares, but it's not exactly the case, and we are not living in a very easy context at the moment. There are lots of things happening, and environmental problems are often too far away from people's day-to-day concerns. So it was really important for us to make sure that we are relevant, that our stories are timely and not just emotional, because yeah, it's clear the Caspian is in crisis, but how do we get people's attention? So the context really mattered to us, and we did try to tie our stories to that. The second pillar of our communication strategies, of our communication strategy, might seem a bit odd to you at first, but I think you'll get a better idea of why I decided to merge those two um, in one. Um, so I called it legal and media tools, but they really do hand in hand in our case. But using both together, we wanted to push for transparency. Again, more in this later. And the last pillar of our strategy was to tell engaging stories that are not only emotional and but they also shareable, they resonate with people, creative, but at times they even provocative, because we wanted to make the Caspian visible again. And that's again the reason why we're meeting today, because everyone thought that uh, the Caspian is not exactly getting the attention it needs, and we wanted to change that. So now I wanted to walk you through how exactly we applied each of those pillars. So as I said, we were founded about a year ago, and the timing was actually perfect for us, because about a month later, in January of 2024, the beginning of this year, the president of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, actually called for a revision of the product sharing agreements. We haven't had a chance to talk about those just yet, but and we will talk about those quite extensively. But just to give you an idea, those are the agreements that established the terms under which oil and gas companies are operating on the regions and are making profits in the region. That's why they are so important. That's why the revision of those agreements is critical for this campaign. Another thing that happened this year is that in April of 2025, there was a huge media investigation from the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, ICIJ, who posted a very interesting expose about a classified 160 billion arbitration case between the government of Kazakhstan and the North Caspian Operating Company, NCOC, which is the consortium behind the massive Kashagan oil field. And the report revealed that, well, in fact, 98% of oil revenues were being taken by international oil companies in the Kashagan oil field, leaving Kazakhstan, well, with pretty much peanuts, only modest royalties. And that's one of the main arguments that's actually being used is that, well, oil industry is the foundation of the economy in Kazakhstan, but then we hear this story and that makes us wonder. So imagine all those 98% were just hidden behind confidential clauses of the agreements that I just mentioned. And it's not really just about money, it's about the secrecy. And I have already mentioned accountability a few times today, but secrecy is the enemy of accountability. We cannot achieve accountability if we don't know what's happening behind closed doors, and we do have the right to know about what's happening. So in September of 2025, there was another important news update. Another thing that I covered briefly today is that the Caspian Sea problem is a regional problem. It's shared by 5 countries. That's why cooperation is really important. And the president of Kazakhstan actually called for this cooperation for an interstate program and even a new regional center for water issues under the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So by connecting our campaign to this political and media milestones, we wanted to make sure that the Caspian Sea continuously stays in the media narrative, not as nostalgia, but as actually breaking news to show people this is what's happening, this is what's been hidden from you, and this is why it's important to start talking about this now, because it's not too late. So now it's important for us to talk about the main tool that we use in our campaign. It's actually strategic litigation, but in our case, we didn't use law as defense, but we used it as a megaphone, and that's the reason why I told you earlier today why I decided to merge legal and media tools together, because in our case, they actually do go hand in hand. So what happened? I'll walk you through the timeline so it makes more sense for you. Well, first of all, in January of 2025, right at the beginning of our campaign, we filed a request to the Ministry of Energy asking to have access to the environmental aspect of product sharing agreements that I mentioned to you in the previous slides, and a concession agreement. So as I said, those set the terms of operations of oil and gas companies and the region. And that's why it's so important for us to have access to those, at least to the environmental clauses. Probably unsurprisingly, but it was still pretty disappointing. What happened is that a month later, in February of 2025, the Ministry of Energy denied our request, claiming that the agreements cannot be disclosed because they were concluded under confidentiality terms. And since the oil and gas companies had not provided written consent to disclose those, they cannot be shared with us, which is against the law. And two things that I wanted to mention. First of all, according to the Aarhus Convention, the public does have the right to have access to environmental information, which is the case for us, because as I highlighted, we were asking to at least be able to see the environmental aspects of the agreements because those directly impact the livelihoods of people living in the region. And another thing, which is more specific to Kazakhstan, is that actually in Kazakhstan, according to the constitution and to the amendments to the constitution, natural resources belong to the people of Kazakhstan. So we do have the right to know how they're being taken care of, what's happening, if the industrial activities have an impact on it. We do deserve to have the right to know. But anyways, our request got denied, and we appealed the decision. We appealed the decision in the course of first appeal and cassation instances, and every single time our appeals were dismissed. So we, at this point, we did exhaust our legal tools in Kazakhstan, but we're not planning to stop here because I promise you at the beginning, one of the most important parts for our campaign is that we're hopeful, and we still are. Although we did exhaust our domestic remedies, we stepped our game, and we made a submission to the special procedures of the UN Human Rights Council and in communication to the Aarhus Convention Compliance Committee. I don't have much more on this at this point because we haven't received a response just yet because it happened recently. But one thing that I wanted to say is that although we didn't get the outcome that we are hoping for in Kazakhstan, it's not over yet. Losing a battle doesn't mean losing the war, and I apologize for this comparison, but what I'm trying to say here is that every rejection in our case became a story. Every time we published an update, journalists picked it up because at this point the narrative was not just about the Caspian dying and about how hopeless it was, but it actually about the injustice that it's happening and the fact that we're not afraid to expose that. And every time we exposed those things, the public learn how actually their environmental rights are being violated. And that helped us build our credibility and actually to appeal to people's emotions. But again, more on that later. I wanted to talk about some of the creative outputs because, as I said, like this pillar of our comp strategy is really related. It's about the legal tools that we've used, but also about some of the communications tools that we used. And we did work hard to make the Caspian crisis visible because we strongly believe that environmental activists, yes, it is painful. It is a lot to process, but it can also be engaging. It can be beautiful, and we're not trying to romanticize the problem, but at the same time, we wanted to appeal to people's emotions. We wanted to engage them. We wanted to get their attention. That's exactly what we're trying to do. On this slide, you can see a rough list of all the things we have done. Obviously, it's not exhaustive, but I wanted to highlight the most important ones, I guess. And after the slides, we'll go into more details about some of those. So we organized, most recently, we organized a fashion performance in Aktau. You can see a picture on the slide, which is from that fashion performance. I'm going to elaborate on that later. But basically, the idea was to blend art, environmental activism together and to deliver a powerful message. And, another event that we organized this year was the High Caspian Week, which happened around mid-August, because this is because there is International Caspian Day. I'm blanking on the exact date, but I believe it's mid-August, I think on the 18th, if I'm not wrong. So, but we had a whole week dedicated to the Caspian. As a part of that week, we tried to gather people again from different backgrounds, from artists to experts to policymakers, just to get together in one place and to rethink how we can reverse this trend. What can we do? And we did host a number of events, which included photo exhibitions, for example, across Kazakhstan, turning public spaces into platforms of awareness. We also had a documentary screening about the Caspian Sea, a community talks, a flash mob. There was a media forum because we have been collaborating with media outlets a lot, both in Kazakhstan and regionally. So yeah, so those are some of the things that we've done as a part of our campaign. And I started talking about the fashion performance, and I just wanted to talk about that a little bit more because that's one of the things that happened recently first, and that's one of the projects where we did take a bit of a risk, just stepping away a bit from like the most obvious approaches, and we wanted to be creative. We wanted to engage different audiences, those who don't particularly engage in environmental conversations most of the time. And I think we did manage to achieve that objective. So one of the things that we managed to achieve with this project is that we got to collaborate with local communities, which appreciated the idea. We did get to work with a model agency there with some artists. And just a quick side note, before anyone starts wondering, since I mentioned pollution is one of the threats that the Caspian is facing, we're not trying to create more pollution with this campaign. Actually, all of the all of everything that was used in that performance was either sourced from vintage stores, secondhand stores, or they were upcycled. So we did pay careful attention to that part. So we didn't want to create more problems by our fashion performance. So again, as I note, so the idea was to visually demonstrate two possible directions of the Caspian Sea. The first one was a dark one. If everything stayed as usual, if you continue with the business as usual, how it would look like, what it would mean for local communities, for biodiversity. Because, well, some of the problems people do know about, but like some of them are less obvious. For example, if you look at the picture in the middle, we wanted to talk about the impact of local communities because people don't really talk about that. And that's a huge issue because we don't know what's going to happen by the end of the century. If the sea drops to its record low, that would mean that many people from the region would be forced to move from the region. And that's a sad prospect that we wanted to highlight. So that was one side of our project. And the other one was more related to the hopeful scenario. Again, we're really focused on that just to make people believe that it's not too late. And we wanted to show how it would look like, what it would look like for the biodiversity, for the people. Yeah, so that was the idea there. And as I said, our success in that sense was to be able to communicate with different audiences. And we did have a publication in Esquire KZ in Kazakhstan, and we are waiting for another one in Kazakhstan, which is supposed to be the last issue of this year, the December one. I think it would be a perfect time before the end of the year, although it's usually a happy time for everyone, but that's also, I think it would serve a good reminder for people to be like, hey, this is still happening. Although the year is over, it's something we need to continue to talk about in the next year before it becomes too late. So yeah, so this is what we've done recently, and a few more things that I wanted to chat about because this entire year we just been trying to keep this story afloat, finding different ways of how to attract new audiences, how to make people act. Another thing that we've done is that we produce a creative long read available in all 6 UN languages and in Kazakh. In that way, we are trying to make our message more accessible because, again, it's a cross-border issue. So that's why it's important for our message to get delivered to international institutions, to regional audiences alike. So there's that. Another thing that we've done is that we launched a petition, uh, which actually collected over 50,000 signatures in a single month, which does serve as a proof that even in an age of apathy, obsession, all of those problems that we are currently experiencing, people still care. If you speak to them with clarity and conviction, and they do care about what's happening around them. So it's important not to give up and to continue doing what we're doing. And another thing, again, I've mentioned that extensively today, but I wanted to highlight with one more time, collaboration has been key to us. Because again, we are trying not to live in that bubble of NGOs who communicate between each other. We wanted to engage more people, and to do that, we did need to communicate with people in their own languages figuratively as well. That's why it was important to collaborate with influencers, to the different media outlets, to be able to reach those audiences. We've had a number of media investigation, for example, with Loose Media. I think it happened earlier this year around winter, but it doesn't matter as much. We collaborated with influencers not only in Kazakhstan, well, for example, in Kazakhstan was Azamar Sarsimbayev, who's a local activist, but also more broadly with a Persian photojournalist, as you can see in the picture. So yeah, so I feel like each and every one of those collaborators, they brought new voices, they brought new audiences and new trust to our campaign. So yeah, so this is a quick, well, not so quick, but an overview of some of the things we've done on the traditional media front. But there is one more thing on the so yeah, so sorry, I was meant to show you that earlier. So just like a quick list of media publications, but if you go to our website, there is much more. We try to publish all of those. So if you're ever interested and you need new information, it's there. Just a few examples from Al Jazeera. We have published a number of op-eds as well in the Diplomat, Caspian Post, what else? The Earth.org and others. Uh, but although communicating through traditional media channels is important, it's just our current reality. Everyone is on social media. Not everyone reads traditional media, unfortunately, although I do. But that's why we focused a big chunk of our time on social media as well. And honestly, in this case, we were not afraid of being slightly provocative at times because that's something that gathered the attention. And one of the examples that I wanted to share with you, which I think was really engaging and powerful in our case, and that's one of the events that I didn't mention to you, but we did have a stand at the Atyrau Oil and Gas conference. So we were just like meeting people there and sharing some information about the Caspian. So it was a really good experience in that sense. But another thing that we were able to achieve with that event is that we were able to, well, I couldn't exactly call that a conversation, but basically what happened is that one of our team members, Galina Chernova, she attended one of the sessions and directly asked oil and gas companies all the uncomfortable questions about their environmental compliance, what they're doing, if there any environmental monitoring happening, and those are very important questions. And to be honest, as a communication specialist, I was really surprised that they didn't have even like template responses ready. Um, and it's also a very interesting observation because it shows how much they don't care because they usually don't get scrutinized. They just do whatever they want to do without zero accountability. So they were caught off guard by that. But thankfully, one of our team members were able to film that, and the reaction was very, well, not surprising, but really entertaining in a way. Well, first of all, one of the things that we were able to capture on camera is that not only they refused to respond, or the best we could get out of them is just like to give us this bureaucratic answer. Well, please forward your request in writing and we'll get back to you as soon as we can, which we know is a lie. Or we would get some, I don't know, some answer that wouldn't satisfy us, but it was clear they were not ready to have a conversation and then you have any answers provided. But another interesting moment is that I think it was like a communications person, but they were just like making signs to the speaker, just showing just don't engage at all, which I don't think is a good tactic, but it's up to them. And probably in this case it was, since they didn't have any responses ready. So, but it did play to our benefit in the sense that once we posted that on social media, people could see that we were not afraid to come. We were asking meaningful questions, and we were not just accusing them of doing anything. We wanted to ask, what are you doing? Um, they gave us nothing, and and that's what helped us to get more support from the people, because they did get the transparency from us, not from the oil and gas companies. And another funny thing is that the companies did try to take the video down, but it was on all social media, so there was not really anything they can do about it. But it could show that they did get that scared. They weren't comfortable with how things unfolded in that event, although it was their event in the end. And yeah, so those are some of the creative outputs we have produced so far. But one of the main questions, and we try to listen to the feedback that we're getting from the public as much as we can. And one of the most common ones, but it's a complicated one, and we do try to handle it as much as we can. But people ask, like, okay, but you're raising awareness, what can I do? It's a really good question, and it doesn't have a simple answer to it. But we also didn't want us to stop our campaign at outrage. And just to be fair, awareness without direction becomes despair, and that's the last thing we wanted to happen. So that's why we proposed a roadmap with concrete and achievable steps. Some of them are more challenging than the others. But for example, if you take a look at the very last one, this is exactly that what you and me are doing today. We're expanding environmental education. We are raising public awareness. I'm not gonna go through each one of those because I think we are running pretty close to the time limit. And I'm always happy to share those if you're interested to see. They're also on our website. The main thing that I wanted to say is that each and every one of those steps tells a story, and it's a story of responsibility, accountability, empowerment, and shared future. And this is exactly what we are trying to achieve. And I think that would be a perfect segue to our very last section. And as I said, maybe it would be a good opportunity to ask questions at this point, because I'm going to just share some of my reflections, some lessons learned, and some tips which could potentially be helpful to you, at least I'm hoping so. And maybe you would have some tips too that you want to share. I don't know. Well, the first thing that I wanted to highlight is that although people do trust expertise, and we were relying heavily on that in our case, because obviously it was important to bring professionals from different fields, people also tend to connect through authenticity, and that's what we're trying to deliver. When we were trying to build our speakers' profiles, we were also sharing their backgrounds, their motivation, their achievements, so audiences could listen to us more careful, because we were trying to build this connection between our speakers and the audiences. Uh, because at the end of the day, people need to know who's speaking before they decided whether they want to believe them or not. And we didn't want just to recite the facts that some of them are pretty known to the public. We even wanted to introduce our messengers. We wanted to build that credibility through transparency, and we wanted to make that contrast between us and, for example, the industrial players, that we have nothing to hide. We have these intentions. This is why we're doing it. And yeah, we the bottom line message is that we have nothing to hide. We want this transparency, and that's why we are calling for it from you as well. Another point is that collaboration multiplies impact. And again, I've covered that extensively throughout my presentation, I believe. But again, like, I think it's really important to realize that the Caspian crisis, it crosses borders, and at this point, it's not only a regional issue, it's a global issue. That's the reason why our communication should also cross those borders, and we don't want to forget that. And that's why we try to communicate, to collaborate with journalists, lawyers, artists, scientists from different countries, because like certain audiences we're just not able to reach, we're not credible to them, or if we are, we don't communicate in the same language. So there's the multiple reasons why we approach things this way, but for us, collaboration is not just a value, it's a pillar of our strategy, and I think it did help us a lot in that sense. My third point is related to vulnerability, and it's somewhat related to the very first one about credibility. But I'm just going to elaborate a little bit more on the vulnerability part, is that even today, we didn't shy away from sharing our setbacks, because I think that's something that makes us powerful. Again, we have nothing to lose, because we do know that the law is on our side, whether we are getting the right outcome or not. We know we are right. That's why we're not scared to share some of the things that have happened, although we didn't get the response that we wanted. Since we were sharing all of that openly, people started trusting us, because they saw that we're not trying to hide behind success stories. And I feel like real change does require a certain level of vulnerability. Vulnerability is not exactly comfortable for all of us, so it's understandable. But I think it's important for communicators not to just show victories, but also show process with all its challenges and setbacks, to make people connect better with you. And the last but not least point is related to awareness. Again, I'm not exactly the biggest fan of that phrasing of building awareness, but I don't think we can necessarily avoid it. Because yes, raising awareness is important. Um, it shouldn't be the ultimate goal. It's not enough. Every story should lead to a certain outcome. And that's why it's important to keep asking yourself challenging and uncomfortable questions. Why are you doing what are you doing? What what can change? How can others join? Again, like those are not there are no easy answers to those, but it is important, because communicating for the sake of communicating is not going to bring tangible results, and that's critical, since we're running out of time. Without that, awareness is just noise, and if we do have the call to action, it becomes movement. So yeah, I guess I'm almost done, but if there is one message that I wanted to leave you with today, it would be that communication is not decoration, it's the whole infrastructure. Because many organizations tend to see it that way, is that you can come up with a project and then you just bring in comms at the very last stage, but not that's not how exactly it works, because communication is a big part of success. It builds bridges between data and empathy, between law and real life, between local stories and global movements. And although the Caspian Sea may seem far away for some of you, the principles we discussed today, such as transparency, accountability, and action, they do apply everywhere, to all the environmental causes we are working on. And yeah, and I feel like the more we as communicators learn to tell those complex environmental stories with honesty, creativity, persistence, vulnerability, it's also a hard word to pronounce, the closer we get to saving not just the Caspian Sea, but many other ecosystems that are on the brink of extinction. That would be it for me. Thank you very much for your time, and let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Tina. Yes, we will ask people if you want to. Yeah, if you have questions, please raise your hand, or you can type in a chat. If not, I mean, please do it. I have some questions to ask you. So you also mentioned this role, what scientific background and your work with expert actually within the project. I have a question regarding the issue that some of our journalists who participate in the project, sometimes they, yeah, as you told, all the time we see the same faces, and it's complicated to find the context of experts, etc. Do you have any kind of database that they can ask you if they want to write about Caspian Sea, for example?
We don't necessarily have a database, but you could always reach out because we do have experts as a part of our team, those who work on the environmental issues and legal issues, but also we are connected with many people from the same field. For example, like those who are working on the seals, for example, they're not exactly a part of the team, but we could always connect you if it's needed. So yeah, I would say just like shoot us an email and we'll see depending on the question that you have. There is no perfect answer because like everyone specializes on their own thing. So yeah, if ever you want to write on this topic, just let us know.
And you also mentioned that you work both with traditional media, like publication, you do publication, but also social media. How do
Mhm.
you see what, like, using what kind of media journalists can support you? You are mostly want to be visible in social media, or you want to have more publication within the region?
I mean, we are not necessarily prioritizing one or another because I do think it's important to get the issue as much visibility as possible. So I would say we're working on both fronts, and it's like it does generate different types of engagement and benefits for the campaign because through media publication, it helps us build our spokespeople's profiles as credible sources of information, but through social media, that's actually the channels where we can meaningfully engage with the audiences, get their feedback, probably like see some of the questions they come up with so we could communicate on those. So there's no perfect answer to it, but I would say we don't really prioritize one or another. We're a small team still, but we are trying to do our best to be present all of that. And unfortunately, I don't know, I just feel like there's so many social media these days, so it's just really hard to stay active on all of them.
But you
Uh,
showed us that you do a really great job. So
yeah,
even if
thank
it's
you.
small team, but in any case, it's really impressive. And also, I have a question, like, do you see any obstacles of your when you're working with promoting Caspian?
Yeah, I mean, we do get reactions from people saying like, "Oh, um, it's pointless. No one's gonna care. You're never gonna get access to those agreements." But I mean, again, we are hopeful, and as I said, even context-based, for example, the president does acknowledge that there is at least a need to revise review the previous ones. Oh, sorry, review them, set different terms. So yeah, so we do get those comments, which are hard to address sometimes. Um, yeah,
Last chance to ask questions if somebody have, but I don't
sorry,
see
did I
any hands.
freeze?
Yes,
I
no,
think I
no.
froze.
No, it's good.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
questions in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any big media interested in the topic? Yeah, I've shared a couple of slides. I can reshare the screen, I think. Can I? Yeah, okay. So there are some examples in the, you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so there are a few examples here. We did have a publication with Al Jazeera, for example. There was another one with Yever News. It was a video, so I couldn't really include it in here, but it has been extensively covered in Kazakhstan in particular and Azerbaijan as well. There are some publications in Italian, uh, Turkish, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I would say so. There's definitely, and with certain journalists, we've had like background conversations as well. So it's not necessarily published right now, but we've had those discussions. So I would say there's a lot of interest from media not only in Kazakhstan but regionally and globally, thankfully as well. Stop sharing again.
Oh, now I see how Zoom works, actually. Sorry, yes. Okay, we have one more question. Does your team collaborate with researchers of Caspian Sea from other countries too?
I could be wrong, but I'm not sure we've had a chance to collaborate with researchers from other countries, but we have collaborated with researchers from Kazakhstan. But again, like our movement is quite new. It's been a year, so we have collaborated with creative professionals from outside of Kazakhstan, but I believe on the research side of things, probably not. But that's
Yeah.
something we want to explore, or Vadim could answer.
I will clarify. Actually, we are working actively with number of scientists from Russia, from Azerbaijan, not from Iran, not Turkmenistan. We try to engage there. In principle, they hear us, but not able to engage actively. With Iran, it's the most challenging. That's Azerbaijan. They're also active on the Caspian Sea. They're trying to work more separately so far. That's despite of some similarities with and the support from the top political level of this issue. That's how it is. With Russia, it's more like individual scientists who work in different area, environmental monitoring, then trying the carbon, the climate projects, that's rating of oil companies, more who are dealing with more practical issues. And there was some invitation also to the conferences in Moscow in August. We were invited, not able to participate.
So here's a much better answer than what I gave.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so I don't see any other questions and no hands, so we can stop here, I think. And yeah, thank you so much again, Vadim, Dina. Yes. Again, if somebody from Central Asia listening us in recording, if you want to promote this campaign or write again local stories or other things related to Caspian Sea, you can also apply for our opportunity, financial opportunity, where support publications or other piece, including in social media and etc. So please apply. Yeah, you will see link in bio of this video. And yeah, again, thank you so much. And yeah, we will finish for today.
Thanks back to you. Thanks for having me today.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.
Thank you very much.